100,000 seat stadiums with huge moats of parking that host like 7 games a year. Do college football stadiums even belong in cities? Well, we're going to explore that question and you can draw your own conclusions, but we're definitely counting down the 10 FBS stadiums that fit their cities the best, and it's coming right up. This is CityNerd, weekly content on cities and transportation. Viewer-suggested topics, always welcome, and here's one that came in on my MLS Stadiums video from Droidman1231. Great video, as always. Any appetite to do one for FBS NCAA football stadiums? I say this from a place of bias because I think my alma mater, Georgia Tech/Bobby Dodd Stadium, would do well, but curious if there are others because I suspect college football seems to be the most egregious sport for land use. First, let me preface this by saying I'm already kind of a skeptic when it comes to the value of quote-unquote urbanist NFL stadiums, but at least those venues host franchises that have a strong connection to a city's identity, and they do host 10 plus games a year if you include preseason and playoffs, and usually other events too. College football stadiums though, that's a bit different. There's some connection to the city, but the connection to school alumni who are often spread all over the planet is a lot stronger. And that can be okay, maybe for the 6 or 7 home games a year. You get people traveling from all over to come to your city and you get a little tourism bump. But you always have to ask, is it worth it given how much space these stadiums often take up? Anyway, looking at some of these things, you do wonder how college football pencils out at all. But then you remember the ticket and concession prices, the billions in revenue from broadcast rights, and the fact that the labor from kids, basically, who spend 3 hours maiming each other every Saturday for 3 months is free. That's a topic for a completely different channel. Anyway, if you're a viewer from outside the US, the wild popularity of this amateur sport will probably never make any sense to you. Even if you've lived in the US your whole life, it still may not make any sense, and trying to explain it is also just a whole other topic. So here's what I'm doing. My starting point is the list of 133 schools that are part of the NCAA Division I Football Bowl subdivision, which theoretically is the universe of teams that are eligible for the national championship, although realistically that pool of teams is limited to like 3 or 4 states in the deep south. For my criteria, I want stadiums that are accessible without a car, that mesh reasonably well with the urban fabric, and don't have footprints that take up enormous amounts of valuable urban real estate. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of the numbers because all the work I do on these things is extremely tedious and I don't want to inflict it on you. I will just say that a threshold criterion for this was you have to have access to rail transit. You can call me a rail snob, and that's fair. I'd go as far as to say that rail is a defining feature of urbanism. It means that your city has grown complex and enlightened enough to comprehend and invest in the near supernatural power of carriages that connect together and travel on metal wheels on metal tracks with minimal rolling resistance. I just got like 3 or 4 more video ideas just writing that intro, so let's just get into it. Number 10, Arizona Stadium, 1 North National Championship Drive, Tucson, Arizona. Sorry, I get that the basketball arena is right there too, but it's still funny. I don't even know which FBS conference Arizona plays in at this point, but whatever it is, I'm gonna put pretty long odds on them competing for a national championship. The stadium is compact though, and it fits nicely into Tucson's grid. The rail transit is the Sunlink streetcar, and I did dock for the fact that it operates in mixed traffic, so just an FYI as you guess along. There were stadiums with better rail service that didn't make this list, but the urbanism and compactness were much worse than Arizona Stadium. Number 9, Huntington Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, home of the Golden Gophers. Not really a standout when it comes to compactness, but the rail service is super convenient. I didn't really talk about this one in my Minneapolis city visit video a couple weeks ago, but the stadium location is good with lots of adjacent land uses for pre and post functioning, which could be a plus if you've been sitting out in sub-zero temperatures for 3 hours. Number 8, I'm pretty sure I have not had Arizona show up twice on any of my top 10 lists, but this is Sun Devil Stadium in Tempe, which I don't think is the official name of the stadium at this point, but whatever. This was a hard one to judge. If you've ever been there, it is weird. It's nestled in this butte in a way I feel like you wouldn't even try to do if it was built today. So the quote-unquote urbanism is kind of odd. But the Valley Metro Light Rail is right there, and Tempe is actually densifying in interesting ways right across from the stadium. And there are a lot of kind of terrible parts of the Phoenix metro area, but this location is a bit of a reminder that even a sprawling Sunbelt city isn't monolithically bad. Valley of the Sun city visit, probably in the not too distant future. Number 7, TDE, some credit union stadium, home of the University of Houston Cougars. Strong Sunbelt representation on this list so far. A bit surprising for this channel, but it is college football. I don't love the footprint, but it fits the grid okay, and there is a Metro Rail Purple Line stop right out front. This one had a starring role in my Texas high-speed rail video, and there are definitely quality spots where you can pre-function, like Wendy's or Cream Burger. Number 6, Alumni Stadium, home of the Boston College Eagles in Chestnut Hill, Mass. Okay, so we're starting to get representation from all regions, and I do like the footprint and walkability of this one. It's just the proximity of the B line and the D line on the T isn't great. The stations are accessible, I guess, but it's getting right on the edge of what I would call transit-oriented. Number 5, Acrisure Stadium, home of the University of Pittsburgh Panthers. Really home of the Steelers, but that's okay. I'm all about co-location. You know, I can never keep up with naming rights changes. I have no idea what Acrisure is or what it sells, and I'm not even gonna Google it. Really good transit access to all 3 lines on Pittsburgh's weird rail network. The footprint is kinda but there is kind of an entertainment district happening here and a casino right next to an NFL/FBS stadium. Seems prudent. Number 4, this one pains me a little since it is my alma mater and I kind of want it to be higher on the list, but it's Husky Stadium in Seattle. It's a stadium that is in a very beautiful setting, but the surrounding land use leaves something to be desired, particularly given how much this kind of land is worth in Seattle. It seems like there should still be a lot of redevelopment potential around the perimeter. It does have fantastic link access, which will get better if the East Side line ever opens, so there's a lot to like here, just a lot of room for improvement. Okay, in a minute I'm gonna get to a few honorable mentions, but first, quick reminder to drop a like on the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, etc. if you enjoy a channel that just kind of throws something different at you every week. Lots of ways to connect on different apps. I've got these in rank order of how often I bother with them, and I'm probably gonna drop a couple of them soon. And Patreon is a fantastic way to directly support my continued descent into madness and make sure it gets documented every week. Okay, I don't have any dishonorable mentions other than mostly just the overall concept of older white dudes making huge piles of cash on the backs of young, mostly non-white dudes who basically don't get paid. I'll just give you my 4 near misses. LA Memorial Coliseum, home of the USC Trojans. Richardson Stadium, home of the UNC Charlotte 49ers. And a couple interesting ones. Snapdragon Stadium, home of the San Diego State Aztecs. The aerial still shows the old Chargers Stadium, which I believe has already been demolished and replaced with a much smaller stadium. And there is a plan to introduce an urban street grid, I think, and redevelop all this. It's just still early on right now. And Philly. The Temple Owls play their home games at Lincoln Financial, which seems a little out of proportion, but extra credit for co-location with the Eagles. I still don't like this eyesore stadium district, but the idea that it concentrates Philly fans in one isolated zone where they can only harm each other is honestly probably a plus. Let's go to number 3, Ryan Field, home of the Northwestern Wildcats in Evanston, Illinois. Not the most efficient footprint for what's probably a pretty valuable chunk of real estate, but walkable to the Central Street L, walkable to the Central Street UP North Station for whatever that's worth on a Saturday, and walkable to probably more proper urban land uses than any other entry on this list. Number 2, Gerald J. Ford Stadium, home of the SMU Mustangs in University Park, Texas. Pretty compact and about as unobtrusive to the neighborhood as an FBS stadium can be. Yeah, it looks like this should be in Dallas, but University Park is one of these weird cities that lie entirely within other cities, which is something I kind of want to do a video on, but then this will turn into a full-on geography nerd channel, and that's just not in anyone's best interest. The thing that really boosts this one, though, is the access to SMU Mockingbird Station on the DART system, where you can get access to 3 different lines, which on a Saturday, I believe gets you more train service than anything else on this list. But not enough to displace my number 1, which is indeed Bobby Dodd Stadium, home of the Ramblin' Wreck of Georgia Tech in Atlanta. You know, it's pretty rare that my viewers are correct about anything, but blind squirrels, acorns. Anyway, full credit to Droidman1231. The stadium is compact. It's in a pretty dense, fairly walkable location, and the access to the North Avenue MARTA station isn't as convenient as some others on this list, but when you get there, you've got access to 2 different lines that run at 15-minute headways on Saturdays. Not perfect, but I do think that this is as good as it gets for FBS stadiums in urban environments. And that's all I've got. Thanks for joining today, and thanks, as always, to the patrons. Your direct support is helping to fund yet another city visit next week, this time Montreal. I just needed a little more Patreon cash to pay for remedial French lessons, but I think I can get by. Keep the great topic suggestions coming. I'll be back with a nouvelle episode next week, and I'll see you then.